I wonder if you feel it the same way I do. A kind of warm, reverent familiarity, tinged with a slight wistfulness. Dozens of icons, spanning several generations and eras of popular culture, luminaries really, are fast approaching a point when they will become unignorably old and will fade en masse into retirement. It's a difficult reckoning to contend with, but over the next couple of years, the actors and directors who have been fixtures throughout our lives, and much of the generation priors, and whose influence and legacies are emulated and suffused through the creative properties of the generation coming after, are at the point now where reprised roles and managed appearances during promotional tours and at prestige events, and silk scarves and flattering soft filters can't hide the advancement of age. This year, the Indiana Jones gang embarks on its last outing, and with Steven Spielberg 76, Harrison Ford 80, George Lucas 78, and John Williams 91, it's astounding, really, that the film has even gotten made in the first place. Harrison Ford, while still having the stamina to feature in a version of Yellowstone, isn't going to maintain that grizzled charm for more than a couple more years. George Lucas has been at a loose end for more than a decade now, and Steven Spielberg, whilst having a few more years up his sleeve, seemed to half-consciously bring his career full circle with the autobiographical The Fabelmans. We should be grateful, of course, that this group has endured for far longer than preceding generations of auteurs. But it's still a dauntingly huge chasm that's going to be left when they step aside. From the incomparable, never-to-be-repeated visceral thrills and magic of George Lucas's Star Wars, to Spielberg's 7-year run of Jaws, Close Encounters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T., and decade-later resurgence with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and John Williams putting down his baton after producing the most memorable and beloved scores in post-war history. It's going to be strange and solemn when they recede from the public eye in the next few years. The direct connection to their properties and franchises is severed, and their descendants and estates will take control of the decisions over rights and licensing. Ridley Scott is now an astounding 85, and although the recent Alien films were underwhelming, it was at least assuring to know the great man was still active in filmmaking. He is either right on the cusp or has already quietly left the industry. David Lynch, at 76, will likely follow suit in a few years. Perhaps as much of a mainstay across the generations as Spielberg and company is the trio of Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino. Heavyweights of cinema stretching back to the mid-70s with Taxi Driver, through Raging Bull and Goodfellas, all the way to 2019's The Irishman. Scorsese is 80, De Niro 79, and Pacino 82. Even these remarkably enduring icons have to face their twilight eventually, and most likely it will be in the next few years. Never has an old guard been older. Michael Caine is now 89, Anthony Hopkins is 85, Bruce Willis at 67 has stepped aside from acting due to aphasia. Sylvester Stallone is 76, and the original Rocky is gone. The Terminator isn't coming back either. Arnold Schwarzenegger is 75. Under this list of venerable greats of cinema is a second tier, who are much younger, but are also only a couple of years from reaching a point where it isn't really all that feasible for them to linger on as virile leading men in action flicks. Tom Cruise, bless him, is still throwing himself out of planes for our viewing pleasure, but at 60, it isn't all that feasible for him to be paired up with conspicuously younger women in action flicks for too much longer. Brad Pitt, for decades the go-to analogy for virile handsomeness, is a few months from turning 60 as well. Johnny Depp is also about to turn 60, and even thickly daubed Captain Jack eyeliner won't hide the wrinkles for much longer. A noticeably sturdy and slatternly Russell Crowe is also about to turn 60, as is Keanu Reeves, who is only a few years away from doing his back-in if he persists with John Wick films. Those gentlemen will no doubt be able to shift down a gear and take roles in more subdued dramas, and I hope they have the sense not to keep signing up for high-octane action dramas into their 60s. Get ready to start moving on, to adjusting to a possibly jarring cascade of retirements of icons who have not only steered cinema through rapid changes and evolutions and created innumerable memories, but have always just been there. At award ceremonies, in interviews, working in collaboration, winning Oscars, performing roles as legacy characters as franchises are turned over to new generations, and reminiscing as raconteurs on late-night TV. Get ready, too, for the transitioning away of the generation of 90s leading men, perhaps the last such generation ever to be, given the studio system is now about tentpole films with huge ensemble casts and powerful managerial studio heads. Sooner or later, even Leonardo DiCaprio is going to have to stop dating blonde women in their 20s. All of the magical films will remain, of course, but they will take on a subtly different feel, no longer as highlights of an ongoing body of work, but as more clearly defined works in the history of cinema.